to open this morning session on music cognition, and we will first listen to the speaker, to Herbert Bruhn. He's a professor of music at the University of Flensburg, and he's a pianist, he's a conductor, and he studied conducting in Hamburg, and he got quite near to Celibidache, and that's where his life turned a bit, and he decided to study psychology because he got in touch with the phenomenology of Celibidache. So he did his diploma in psychology and his dissertation as well, and we're quite happy to have you here. And he will talk about some aspects of the phenomenology of Celibidache, and that's Musik, hören, music listening.
Music, hello, nice to see you. And I did not prepare it in English. I just have to tell you, and it might be not quite fluent. May I have a look? Who needs to hear everything in English? I know in front are the very important persons, my followers, and I'm very proud to sit here in front of you two, because I know you, and we are working in the same field, and we met some time, and I'm really glad to have Marc right behind me, just to fulfill that what I try to promise. Yeah. Music listening, I call it music listening, and then the second word is very important. It's very difficult to translate it into English. To live music, and it's part of German. Musik, erleben is perhaps somebody else to translate it. It's very, very difficult to translate it in a sensible kind. It's important to have music inside of man, and to listen to music means that you sit here and you hear music, and music is in the room in a physical manner, and to live music, to erleben music, Perhaps if somebody
experience music.
Experience music, but experiencing is only the part also from consciously experiencing. The experience is inside the head, but you are able to live with music without consciously experiencing it, and that's very important to have this. Words could be between listening to music and to experience music. So in Germany we have the tradition of Gestalt psychology. I'm sitting right behind before you. You can't see anything.
Hello.
It's a lot of text on the table, but the kinds of manners of experiencing the reality is so important, because we had a school of psychologists in Germany who dealt with this topic in a very fine manner. Reality is not only reality, but reality could have different appearances, different manners of experience. So the physical world is reality for most of us, but the physical world has to be taken real. Wahrgenommen muss wahrgenommen werden. I just switched between the German and the English kinds. I know that Marc understands German as good as I speak English, and perhaps he helped me sometime. The Gestalt psychology is this part of psychology which has an important time between 1900 and 1933. You know that 1933 German psychology had been cut down to a national size, and before this it was so important that I would promise that you should have to learn German to be in the psychology if 1933 had not been. So the Gestalt psychology returned to Germany over the cognitive psychology and the information theories, but it changed a bit. The most important thing of the Gestalt psychologists was not that they had some laws. It was the kind of looking at the reality. The physical world is it's not part of the man. The physical world becomes part of the man by taking it aneignen. It becomes the angeeignete world. The world has been taken from the physics by us and is made a world by the process of perception. These two worlds, the physical reality and the world of the man, are they seem to be separated into two worlds, and they are really not, because they are in connection with the other. And when you see this in the row, you see that the perceived world is the only world we have. So we have two worlds, and that's what Chilividake says. We have two worlds of reality, and he says of the doppelte Wirklichkeit, a double reality. Die doppelte Wirklichkeit, now I have to speak a bit in German. Die doppelte Wirklichkeit ist die Realität des Musizierens und Musikmachens überhaupt. Wir sind dabei, physikalische Klänge herzustellen. We are about to make physical sounds, and these physical sounds are not able to become music. They have to be taken by to be perceived and then formed to the second world of music. And Chilividake says, dieses kann nur unter bestimmten Umständen geschehen. Es müssen Voraussetzungen dafür da sein, dass aus der physikalischen Welt eine angeeignete Welt, eine Welt der Musik werden kann. So the process of taking the information, changing the information and perceiving it has been dealt with in the psychology by the two parts, apperception and perception. It now disappeared, but in former times they had these two expressions, because it was the people felt that there's a difference between taking the sounds by the ear and taking the sounds by the consciousness. Now we already we know already that this is a process which can't be cut into two parts, because the consciousness is able to influence the processes down to the ear, and on the other hand, the processes which are coming from the ear are in connection with the conscious processes from the first time. I spoke in the small abstract about the psychophysical parallels, psychophysischer Parallelismus, oder das Problem des psychophysischen Dualismus. In former times, the philosophers said that there are parallel processes which have to be brought together. These parallel processes are, the first one, the physics in connection with the physiology, and on the other hand, the psychological processes. And the Gestalt psychologists have pronounced that this is only one process. Also, the physics are also in connection with us. There are no physics without us. If I'm not here, there are no physics for me. The physical surround of this and this, das klingt ein bisschen wie Allgemeinplätze, so die Philosophie, die man in der Schule hat. Man spricht über den Baum, der draußen an der Fensterscheibe ist, und spricht über das Pult, an dem man sitzt in der Physiologie. Und es gibt heutzutage, glaube ich, keine Philosophie-Vorlesung, wo nicht der Baum neben dem Haus besprochen wird. Ich habe sogar die Theorie, dass also bestimmte Universitäten, auch wie dieses Gebäude hier, für Philosophie nicht geeignet sind, weil man keinen Baum vor dem Fenster hat. Es ist auch in Flensburg so. In Flensburg wachsen die Bäume allerdings schon so, nur Vorlesungen der Philosophie sind im 4. Stock und da sind noch keine Bäume. Deshalb braucht jede Universität wahrscheinlich ein gewisses Alter, um über Philosophie reden zu können. The philosophy, it's so important to stress this part, the dualism, because dualism is only a technical possibility to deal with the problems. Dualism is an outside view which does not deal with music. The music only appears in the consciousness of people, and so music is very individual. Nobody knows how you and you and you listens to Brahms or listens to Strauss. And often we feel that Mozart is conceived or perceived by most of the people in the same way, but there's no reason to assume that. There's no reason to assume that. And it's no problem if we all have a different Mozart. We all love this Mozart, and so we need not try to bring him into the same surround. That's the first part. This double reality, the world and the physical reality, the world of the man and the physical reality, is still broader than you think. When you see the things in the physical reality changing, you do not say there's something changing in my head. You always say that's changing something in the reality. When I play a piano piece, I just want to play it now. Do you hear this piano piece inside of your head? It's built up in your head, but you think and you know that it's coming from the loudspeakers and the technical surround. Just anyone? It's a very short one, you know. Yeah. So. It's a very, very famous piece. Who recognize it? All of you? And yes, Musik will eine Ausstellung. That's the piano part. This one is the original part, and it's made afterwards by Mussorgsky and by Rimsky-Korsakov to an orchestra piece. When I played in my university, nobody recognizes. They normally say interesting piece, and it's very, very hard to play. and seems hard to play. I don't want to play it, and they don't recognize also that it's in romantic piece. When you have it in the orchestra, it's very much easier to recognize the chord progressions and the harmonic progressions. And when in the piano version, sometimes the chords are standing one beside the other. That was for me the first time when I recognized that somebody was not able to follow romantic harmonies. A friend of mine told me he did not like Brahms because it's so unharmonic. Yeah. He says, oh yes, every chord is sounding very well by himself, but there is no sense in the progression of the chords. And it's for us as musicians, it's very difficult to understand this, but this is the important thing, that in the perception, the progressions are a part of the piece. And the piece itself offers you all these things, but it's not necessary to process every part of this, to hear good harmonies. But it is very, very important to see and to progress another level of reality on which these connections are realized. These connections are realized in another reality, which is called by the social psychologists third world. So they are realities without reality. Yeah. And then perhaps you help me. Is there another world of reality? In Germany, we have the good chance to take the word from the Italian or the Latin origin and to say the same without saying the same. Real and wirklich is the same. But the Wirklichkeit is that what works in us. Wirken. The Wirklichkeit has another presence within the man. We have wirkliche Realität und unwirkliche Realität. It's not working or not. Unwirkliche Realität is something which has not eine Entsprechung in der physikalischen Welt. Entsprechung, ja. Equivalence, yeah. Which has an equivalent part in the physical. Very good, yes. So the Wirklichkeit becomes reality. The reality becomes Wirklichkeit inside of man. And within this Wirklichkeit, we have kinds of other worlds which are imagined, and they are found in the reality. And we have other realities which and other worlds which cannot be found in reality. That's what Wolfgang Metzger, and I have to write it down now. So, working with all media overkill. So Wolfgang Metzger. He had been one of the last Gestalt psychologists. He remained in Germany after 1933, and he had always been said that he worked together with the Nazis. I don't know anything about this, but as all of the professors who had been in the Nazi time after the Second World War without a job and employment, they had been given jobs and employments by the new governments, and mostly in Saarbrücken, in Freiburg, in Münster, and Paderborn. These are always the very conservative parts of Germany. And, might be that there were some old friends, 1,000-year-old friends. Wolfgang Metzger had the honor, so he is very important, therefore. He saved Gestalt psychology into the 50s and the 60s. There's a book, Metzger, Psychologie, which should have been read by everybody, and he speaks about the Erscheinungsformen der Wirklichkeit. The first was the physical world, the second was the anschauliche Welt, die Welt der Aneignung, the world which we took from the physical world and let it become world in our head. And then we have, I say, first is second C, psychology. Then vorgestellte Welten, imagined world or assumed world, vorgestellt. So the German word is also very good. We put it before us. We put it before us. Vorgestellt. And eine Vorstellung is made by ourselves, and this Vorstellung might be found in the reality, but might be not. And now, when I imagine that there is an overhead projector, and there's a sound coming from here, I look at it and I see it, and it's real. And I could also imagine that in other rooms with lectures, also something like this, a beamer is standing there and making loud sounds, unmusical sounds. And but there might be other things which I could imagine which are not there. So when I say normally there's a symphony orchestra behind me, at the moment not, but normally they are always playing Beethoven. Then you would, you smile, and you could smile when you see me, so I don't look so weird. But there are other people which you could trust that they really often hear Beethoven behind them, and sounds and words and people speaking about that. And so the realities are very close together. When I imagine Beethoven, just tell you, Beethoven 5th Symphony, something is beginning to sound in you. It's normally sounding in everybody, and it's one of the pieces which is very often. I didn't hear anything. Normally, my class sings then, and don't sing, please. Another imagination, Mozart, Kleine Nachtmusik. Also beginning, and now I send you the worst Ohrwurm as Beethoven für Elise. Yeah. And now you live with it all the day. And then there's the border between the reality, which could be met in the physical world, and the reality which could not be met. And this border is a very small road. It's a very small path, and this border is the border between being normal and being schizophrenic. So just in hearing, you see it, that these different kinds of words can be cut off from the normal population. There's a small Grat, a small mountain Grat, which you pass by one step, and then you are. And but
drüber oder
Ja,
beyond.
Beyond, yeah, beyond on the other side. That's the definition of the people, of the normal population. This definition is not so clear as I just told it to you, and which might be seen so by theorists. There's the reality without reality is not so clear cut. We have this. We define this border so fine because we are all anxious to cross the border. So we always tell there is a border, but it's beyond us. We are on the right side, and normally there are many people who have problems with schizophrenia and the other forms of psychiatric diseases, and they are quite normal in the daily life, and so all we have also some abnormal things in us which we don't discover. And we don't discover it. And discover means not that we don't discover it for us. We know it, but we don't discover it for the other. We cover it. There's a bit phenomenology in the English also. So, and on the other hand, the German language is very willingly is willing to make a lot of fine distinctions. These distinctions are in music. They are very important in music, and so I just try to show some other things. When you hear something about this, for example, the Teiltonreihe, we think this is a physical, the physical foundation of music, and it is not. Nothing of this is part of the music. It's a kind of Anregung. It's ein Vorschlag, proposition. Yeah. Pythagoras proposed to take this for music, and when we play it on the piano, in the lectures, it's very nice to play the lower parts and to show the pupils and the students how the several tones are able to force the other tone to sound, although it is not played. But when you're on this, when you're there, you have problems. And normally you already have problems with the third. The third does not sound very well. Just a hint, take the double octave around, beyond, then it sounds quite well, but it can't sound because the third of the piano is not this tone. And also we are going on, you have the octave, and always we are save our souls, telling them, yes, there's something different inside, and we get it in the next lessons. I think if in front there are still two chairs, if somebody wants to sit. So also the octaves are not quite right. The octaves are different on the piano when you play down, and it's not a mistake of the piano tuner. The Oktavspreizung is a very important thing, and you can produce it with the students with two synthesizers. It's so obvious that from 3 octaves or 4 octaves, nearly everybody, 4 octaves are 2 hertz, the plus of 2 hertz. And when you take these tones right beside together in one level, you hear the beating very, very, very hard. It's da 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 da. The beat is of 2 hertz is a very fast beat. And taking them out again 2 octaves outside, it disappears, and they are always when you don't give them the chance to know what they are tuning there, they tune 2 hertz more for the octaves. So the physics are kind of necessary for music, but they are not the foundation of music. The foundation of music lies right inside of man. They take these physics as a hint and as a proposal to make something out of it. And so this, for example, that's some work from Jobst Fricke in Köln. It shows a choir. They are singing a tidy tone. And this tone has a center here from a bit more than 400 hertz, and it goes in the Verteilung, what's Verteilung? Distribution from 390 up to 420 hertz. And you hear one tone. It's kind of Bandrauschen, it's a band noise, and it's perceived as a real tone. And you should think that it would be better when you play with when you have a string trio, but also the string trio, which is an American study, has differences in the intervals which are near to a quarter tone. This would be the 0, 9. That's better. The cent for a semitone might be 100 cent. To know all the cent scale, 200 cent are 1 octave, 12 times 100. It's a kind of artificial scale, which is sometimes very useful, but it's not very useful when you have it with students for school music. They don't understand it at the first time, because they always tell you that these frequencies are alike. So it's very difficult to have several scales for one thing. You can't switch. It's the way that when people are not very experienced in the first scale, the frequency scale, and then you propose them another scale. But it's very obvious that the tidiness of Western European music is not very good when you try to make mathematical models. This is the work from Butler, I think. I think it was Butler who tried to find out what the people are taking as a semitone. As a semitone, a full tone, a small third, and a great third. And it's always so that he had one tone fixed and the other tone changes, and they had to decide several times whether it is a small third or a great third. And there's a very clear cut in this point, but you see that nearly 50% are changing their meaning very late. There's no Niemandsland, we say in German.
Nirvana.
Yeah, Nirvana. There's no Nirvana. Between the thirds, so you have very, very great small thirds and very, very small great thirds. The thirds are part of a functional whole, in which they are defined by the music as a third. That's quite different in the fourth. The fourth has a clear-cut distinction between the great third and the tritone. The tritone is a very complicated chord. Nobody knows what's happening at that time. And the fifth is also very clear. The sixth is also different. So it might be as if there are 3 kinds of sixths. So that might be really right. A small sixth, imagine C, E flat, could on the one hand, could C, E flat belong to C minor, So then it has a tension which goes down to the C. On the other hand, this could also be the small third of F minor. And when you F minor and when you send ta-da, then the E flat tries to go up to the A. This is the other part might be the higher part of this here. Oh, come on. Is it? That's it. This one is the lower part, which tries to go down, has tendency to go down. This part is the one which is a semitone before the A. And then you have here again the same appearance with the major sixth. Okay. Oh, that's faster than I thought. No problem. This you also can. No? Everybody knows it? No. First row knows it. From Herbert Bruhn. And that's in a poke in the USA where we should begin to make phenomenology. So you know that what Timo told about phenomenology and and that now I take the word the first time. It's a very difficult word, phenomenology. And when you practice it as a student of Chilividake, you have to practice it because he always said it very fast and always right. We are making jokes about it, Theomiogi, and Chilividake or Chividaki. So you have to be very clear and sober to take both words in the right order. That's not the only thing which makes it difficult, because Chilividake takes this as a weapon sometimes. It's a kind of weapon against musicians, against the opinions of musicians, because music is always taken by everybody in the individual manner. It's very difficult to deal with 120 symphony orchestra musicians, which are well educated and making chamber music and have their own ensembles and mostly on discs. So you always said in a discussion when they told you, he tells them, please make the melodic line in this way up there, and the high point, the main point, and this note. They always tell, no, I don't think that it is like that. I have to speak about it. It is, the discussion, the orchestra begins. He always said, no, phänomenologisch gesehen ist es so. And nobody was able to say anything against this. And there is a phenomenology which is able to say truth about music. And now it's a very, very difficult way to find the truth. In this chart here, by this Shepherd and Crow.
Yeah, this Shepherd.
Yeah.
That was the very first thing.
Yeah, it's the most important thing. So when you are, it's only part of the statistical reality. So because these dimensions, there are 3 dimensions, and it looks as if they are 2 results. But I just tell it as most people would understand it. On the left hand, we have the tonal reality of well-educated musical people, intermediate people, and least musical people. And you see that the weights of the dimensions are different. The more the people are educated, the more they take both the tone height and the chroma cycle as important measures for music. And the less the people are educated, the less, you see it here, the cycle of fifth is real. Come on. The cycle of fifth is real. For well-educated people, it is very real. For not so well-educated people, they don't understand the cycle of fifth. And I have other experiments that I wanted to present now, where you see that the cycle of fifth is also a very complicated cognitive construct. it developed only within the Middle European Western music, and on this Middle European Western music, it only dominates a very small period of 200 years. And we always say this is music. This is only a very, very small part of the musics of the world. And most music of the world are dealing with high and low tones, and they hope to meet these high and low tones as good that the others understand it. And also in Middle Europe, it's not so normal that they understand it very good. Well, perhaps I take 1 minute more.
One.
There is when you go into a football stadium, you understand nothing about Middle European tonality. But this is the most frequent singing of young people. Nobody sings so much as the football fans in the stadium, and it's kind of music culture which we don't deal with. We all say that we have a very complicated music harmony and rules and theory. This theory is derived by abstract music, which does not exist. When you hear something about the cadences from Rameau, they are an ideal form of cadences which are developed much further than we have it. The music theory of Riemann, Schenker, or the cadence theories are very complicated and very good to teach, because the rules are very dense together. But when we take one choral of Bach, we find 3 or 4 parts where he misses the rules. He makes mistakes. Bach makes mistakes. And that's very important. I try to figure out which parts of music are able to be defined by rules, and most parts are not defined by rules. And but on the other hand, the human consciousness makes rules by themselves, and we take the most experienced musicians, the composers, to make them their rules by themselves, and they have to communicate these rules. When they're able to communicate their own rules, then you're able to perceive music. And when it is not possible to communicate the rules, the composer will be forgotten. We have a lot of composers at the moment now who are not very well known in the world. So we have a regional music scene, for example Hamburg, which is very rich. But you go to Kiel and nobody knows this rich composing scene. It's much worse in the jazz scene. So when I know the composers of the Hamburg Music School, they are well known in Hamburg, in Munich, in Berlin, and we are here very glad that the Hamburg Music School has lots of composers which are well known all over the world. But for example, the music school of Lübeck, you know that there's also something like a center of music education, music performance. And do you know any of the composers? Yeah, but they are also very good and very well known. The problem is in the small part of the classical music that we deal with people who must be very interested in hearing and listening, and they have to translate the rules very good, and they have to be experienced also in listening to unfamiliar music, and that's it's now ein bisschen Aufgabe, it's Aufgabe, task, yes, it's a task for music educators and musicologists to communicate this and to help people get into the strange musics. Okay, and all the other rules are very interesting and have to be communicated also. Music harmony, But don't say that there is something true or right. Everything is depending on the individual perception of man. That's the end.
Okay. So there will be some time for questions.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Just a brief observation about these plots. When this experiment was done, if I recall correctly, the subjects weren't classified as having any experience or not. It was after the data analysis was done.
Oh, you know that?
Yeah. And what was interesting, though, was in the group 3, which is the least musical, it was almost as if they didn't have, there was no tonal hierarchy. They didn't have some notion of fifth, like you say, fifths and thirds and tone like you have in group 1. If group 3 was paying attention only to height, brightness, or spectral information, then it could be that they were just attending differently.
Yeah. That's a developmental phenomenon.
Yeah.
So when we try to remember Piaget, the Swiss psychologist, he discovered that the people are always fixed. So you have the these juice experiments. They have a big glass and they pour it a bit, and then a very small glass, and they pour it into the other one, and they tell the children, which one do you want? They pour it to the other one, and then they normally decide to take one of these glasses. They are very, very clear in their decision to take one of the glasses, and then you ask them why. They say because it's more. And some say more for the thin, high glass, some for the other glass. They don't know the two dimensions. And in the music we have several dimensions. That was proved by Bruhn Shepard. The tonality has dimensions which are perceived by the people, and the amount of dimensions they are able to have in their mind. It depends on the experience with the different part. That was something what Piaget did not know at that time. He said it's a kind of mathematical genius inside of us which has dimensions, and then when we are able to take in consideration two of the dimensions, we are on a certain level, and these two dimensions are always taken into consideration. And we know now that's in music much faster when they're playing piano, and it's in juice much faster than when they often pour juice from one glass to the other. And so we have in music a lot of dimensions which we should mind. It's not only the tonality, so harmony has dimensions by itself, and also the tones and the sound has dimensions. When we now have music, pop music, which has less dimensions within the harmony, they don't modulate, they don't leave the tonality for a longer time. Then we have much more dimensions when we try to describe the sound of the music. Sounds are they have a very, very wide spectrum to go to work with music in the modern classical music and in the modern pop music. And it's the time of sounds, as it is the time of harmony in the 18th and 19th century. Yeah.
I have one remark and one question. And the first remark goes to the frequency distribution of the choir notes that you showed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is a very old picture from Lothar Mozart, and I just to say, be aware that frequency is not a thing that is technically easy to measure. So if you use analog bandpass filters, as is probably the case in this image, you will always get uncertainty.
Yeah.
So even a sinus tone would give a pretty broad distribution with
yes, in the sinus tone. Sorry, the question was this remark. The sinus tone is not a sinus tone. We don't have any sinus tone. When you
even a technical generated sinus tone.
And the technical sinus tone is within this room no more a sinus tone because it's reflections and it's broken into a lot of tones.
But you don't have to give it into the room. You can measure
the sinus tone right into a wavelength.
Yeah. But even a technical and non-spatial sinus tone would give a distribution of frequencies. So that's a measuring mistake, and it's not a physical phenomenon.
Yes. It's okay. When you take a sinus tone with a wavelet generated and I show it, it is a sinus tone. But perhaps this is when I take it from a technical medium into the second technical medium, it remains a sinus tone. What would you deny that?
I don't know what you're aiming at, but
yeah. So when we have now a musical tone, this is, for example, that's a church tone. Yeah. When we now pull it outside, away, and you see that's a very clear tone. Of course, it's not a sinus tone, but it looks as if it is made by sinus tones.
Okay, maybe we leave that or the coffee break, because I think it's about. It seems that it's quite simple and trivial to have two worlds, but as we can hear, it's quite good to know what word or in what world you're talking right now, to pin down something.
Oh yes.
And I want to remark one last thing. You mentioned Popper and Eccles. They have two worlds, but a third world of information for so that also maybe they have a three-world model, not a two-world
I
model.
have another three-world model. It's the social surround. It's not the way of communication. We discussed about that here. And the social world is much more important than the individual world. So we are forced into a social world. In Middle Europe, it's normal to have major chords. And these major chords are dominating the whole culture. Not only major and minor, it's really major.